Hi folks, it's John Nizman from lastchanceautorestore.com, and we're back with the 1959 Chevrolet Corvette. Previously we had a short little video and we just picked this vehicle up. It was in the back of our trailer. We found it in the lower states. We're up here in Canada, and so this is for a client. It's a very rare car. So basically what I'd like to do is share with you some of the things that we did with this car, and we'll basically do a brief walk around. We'll look underneath the hood. We'll talk about some of the refinements that we made and some enhancements in terms of the interior and so on. So it's a 1959 Chevrolet Corvette Convertible. It's the correct raven red with the white ovals in the side. And so if we come around the front, the car has been painted probably 20 some years ago, I'm guessing, 15 to 20 years ago. So it's had a couple of different paint jobs. It looks really, really shiny in here. There are a few spots on the car where the lacquer is starting to pop through, and probably in maybe 2 to 3 years, this would be a perfect candidate to remove all the chrome, sand all the paint down to the gel coat and start over. But for right now, we have a client who's always wanted a 59 Corvette, but never sat or driven one. So this, in our opinion, is the best way to do it. Get one it's a nice car, it's a respectable driving car, and the safety standards between the US, where we purchased the vehicle, and in Canada are quite different. So one of the things that we had to do is do a full inspection, not only in terms of exhaust, suspension, steering, but also electrical components. And so it's one thing to be a little bit cautious of when you see a vehicle, especially if you're in Canada and you're looking at a car that's in the United States. There's a lot of different standards in terms of safety before this vehicle can be licensed and put on the road here in Canada. So we'll touch on some of the things that we did. So it's a very nice looking car. We love this body style, love the color combination. So this is probably one of our most favorite years in terms of the Corvette. So it's not a numbers matching engine, but it's a period correct V8 carbureted engine. It's a 4-speed manual transmission, which is very desirable. We did quite a bit of work. So in terms of the braking, all of the wheel cylinders were leaking. So this vehicle, as it was equipped in '59, has the original master cylinder with the one single line, and it's 4-wheel drum brakes. So we removed the drums, we measured the drums of all 4 brakes, or at all 4 wheels, and they were all under spec in terms of safety standards. So what that means is the drums have been machined so many times that the thickness of the material left is not to a safety standard. So we replaced all 4 drums with brand new drums for this Corvette. While we were doing the brakes, we noticed that all 4 wheel cylinders, probably from the car sitting for a while, all 4 wheel cylinders were leaking and had some seepage. So we replaced all 4 wheel cylinders, and then we readjusted the brakes and cleaned everything up. The shoes had been done at some point, but not drums. So we replaced the wheel cylinders, adjusted the brakes, replaced the parking brake cables and pivots. They were seized from not being used. And here in Canada, you have to have a parking brake and it has to be able to work. And especially being a 4-speed, you want to definitely use the parking brake. So in terms of the braking, we basically did all the repairs with that. And then in terms of the suspension, with the upper and lower control arms, instead of having bushings, they're threaded in, and the rods, and they have fittings on either end. This car obviously didn't have too hard of a life because it had the original, and they were quite worn, it had the original control arms, both upper and lower. So we replaced them. We purchased the parts through Corvette America, and so we have all new control arms, both upper and lower, because there's too much play in the suspension. So we corrected that, and we also inspected the ball joints and tie rods, the tie rods and the steering box and that sort of thing. So all of the steering components and safety for steering, suspension, braking were enhanced and redone. So then as we come around the vehicle here, you'll see the paint turned out quite nice. So as I mentioned earlier, there are a few flaws in the paint, but we spent quite a bit of time and we wet sanded and polished, and we're able to get quite a brilliant shine. So this is a great car to take to like a show and shine or to some local car shows. This is not a concours type restoration or repair. We also do that type of restoration, but for this one it was mostly mechanical and then cleaning up cosmetically and making sure that all the mechanical components were running properly. So I'm just going to pop the hood because we made some changes underneath the front hood. So there's a release here. So one of the things when we picked this Corvette up is the hood wasn't opening nor closing properly. And they're a little bit tricky in this style, in this series of Corvettes, because there's a cable, a release handle, and cable that is underneath the dash. It splits into two. So there's two separate cables with latches and levers, and it was seized. So we had a heck of a time lifting up. Oh, sorry, I don't have it released all the way, which I'll probably have to pull that handle. So I think I have it this time. Yes, okay. So I'll just set this up so it has the double latch for the hinge. So you'll notice it's very clean underneath the engine bay. As I mentioned with the cables for the hood release, you can see these mechanisms here. These were all loose when we picked the vehicle up. So you can see at the bottom of the hood, there's the plates with the adjustment bolts, and you can see where they were adjusted before and where they are now. So someone has replaced these because they're known for seizing, and these latches were replaced, but the cables weren't hooked up and they weren't adjusted properly. So it was a little bit tricky to get the hood to open and close properly. So it's just one of those important details, and it's also a safety issue. You have to be able to open and close the hood, obviously, freely. So in terms of details, I mentioned earlier, this is not a numbers matching, meaning this engine is not the exact engine that came with this Corvette in '59, but it's very clean and tidy. So it's a rebuilt engine. Based on the number on the engine block, it's 63 to 66, I believe, in terms of the engine. But it's been rebuilt. We did a compression test. All 8 cylinders were strong. And there had been some detail work, and some gaskets had been replaced and changed, and some painting done. There was a few concerns that we had. Number one is cooling was a big issue. So the radiator has been recored at one time, but this shield is something that we had to purchase and install. So this shield surround, you can see inside is the fan and the blade. When we purchased the vehicle and brought it home, we noted that there was no shroud. And without the shroud between the front of the engine and the radiator, it doesn't create, in this style, it's a suction. So you have to create airflow to suck through the rad in terms of the direction, the way the fan is going. It wanted to overheat a couple of times, and for a couple of different reasons. Well, 3. One was it had the incorrect thermostat. So you can see here at the front of the housing, we removed this thermostat, or the thermostat housing. You can see we have new hardware. We replaced the thermostat with the correct temperature range, a new gasket, and then we have new clamps and new rad hose, along with a new belt. So the first concern we had was with the thermostat itself. The second concern was the radiator cap. It wasn't sealing properly, so as this vehicle was idling and it got to operating temperature, you could start to smell coolant, and then a little bit of coolant was flowing through this neck. So instead of going into the overflow, it was basically just spewing out this top neck. So obviously we replaced the radiator cap. So once we had that done, we flushed the cooling system twice. There was a lot of brown, not the most attractive looking color of fluid that came out. So we flushed the radiator and the cooling system twice, and we were able to get it nice and clean when we drained it the last time. And then we've got the proper coolant mixture. So then we added this cowl, or the fan shroud or surround. And the Corvette of this vintage, it's a 4-piece, and it's kind of tricky to install. So it was completely missing and not with the vehicle. So once again, we got it from Corvette America. It's a nice reproduction, and it has a bottom piece, 2 sides, and the top. So by having this installed properly, it creates more turbulence and more cooling airflow, which helps keep this engine a little bit happier. So you can notice underneath the hood, there's lots of detail. It's nice and clean. It's very tidy. We don't have any leaks. We had a battery that did not pass the load test. We had to charge it every time when we went to move the car. So we've upgraded it with a gel style battery. It's, I believe they call it an AGM series through Napa, and it's a fiber mat with a gel as opposed to an acid, which is, I'm told, one of the best batteries you can buy in the market now. So we upgraded the battery. Once again, another item that wasn't with this particular Corvette was a hold down. So essentially they just had a battery sitting in that tray, but safety standard states that that battery has to be secure and bolted and held in position. So we got the correct hold down, correct Corvette battery hold down for this 59 model. So now it's bolted as it should, as an important safety feature. The other thing that we did, this car had an older Holley 4-barrel carb, and it didn't have a choke on it, manual nor electronic. So with no choke and all the mechanisms were quite worn, one of the options we had was to rebuild the Holley carburetor, but it seemed to be quite a worn, excessively worn carburetor, and not very happy with the engine. So we struggled with trying to get it to run properly. We followed proper protocol. First thing you do is you check the timing, and the timing was set too far advanced originally. So I'm assuming because of the problem with the carburetor, the previous owner probably tinkered with the timing, because if you advance the timing, as you know, you can throw things off and then adjust the carb to try and compensate, but you're basically just chasing a circle or going around in a circle. If you don't have timing correct and you don't have a proper carburetor, you're not going to have a very enjoyable or reliable vehicle. And because our client wants to enjoy this on nice days as a driver, here in Ontario this summer, we had to deal with this carburetor. So to be period correct for a 59, what you would do is, this came with a Carter carburetor and it was a 4-barrel. So we did a little bit of research on purchasing a used Carter carb, and then the opportunity of buying a rebuild kit, spending the time to rebuild this carburetor or a Carter carburetor, and setting it up, and then our client could drive the vehicle. When we looked at the cost of period correct or a similar Carter carb and the kit and the time it would take, it seemed to be more feasible to replace it with a brand new carburetor. So what we have here, you'll notice in terms of appearance, this looks quite stock in overall appearance. However, what we did, because it was very important to us that our client is able to enjoy, to drive this vehicle whenever he decides to, we didn't want to have him going through the stress of, you know, do you pump the gas once or twice, and it didn't have a choke, so you'd literally have to keep working the throttle until the engine warmed up and got up to temperature. And then the floats were worn, so you've got your primary and secondary floats that couldn't be adjusted properly. So if you're driving this vehicle and if you simulated coming up to a stoplight or a stop sign, when you decelerated, the car went slightly forward as you decelerated, and the vehicle would stall. So obviously a lot of safety concerns. So this carburetor that we have here is, it's a copy of a Holley. We've probably installed, I'd say, what, Julie, 10 to 15 of these carburetors, I guess? Roughly, I would say. So we've had really good success with these carbs, and I like them for a few reasons. Number one is they're very much like a Holley. They have the sight windows in the side in both primary and secondary floats, so you can see the float levels. They're fairly easy to adjust. If you come around to this side, you'll notice that it has two fuel rails. So you have, this is the only thing that's a little bit different visually. You have your fuel supply coming up, and it tees into this fuel rail, which supplies both the front and rear of the carburetor. So this visually is a little bit different looking, but most of it is hidden by the air cleaner. This device on the side of the carb, in my opinion, is really important. and that's an electronic choke. So this will make this Corvette, or help this Corvette, be very enjoyable and very trouble-free. So the way we have this set up right now is when the vehicle is cold, you're simply just going to go into the vehicle, hop in, step on the accelerator pedal once, turn the key, it's going to fire right up, and because of this electronic choke, it's going to go to fast idle. You just let it idle on its own, and electronically it will warm the coil inside, and then it will lower the choke down to a normal idle when it gets to operating temperature. We did 2 or 3 road tests with this carburetor, and with the proper setup and the exact timing correct to the factory standards in 59, it's an extremely happy engine. So it idles great, it accelerates wonderfully well. We did quite a bit of work to the clutch. There was a lot of pins and levers and controls and springs that were worn and not set properly. So once we changed all of the components with the clutch mechanism, shifting became very easy and smooth. So this will be a really enjoyable car for a client to drive with this nice clean setup. Now, just to clarify, if this 59 Corvette was a numbers matching vehicle, meaning that the engine, block, and everything matched this car, we certainly wouldn't replace the carburetor with a new aftermarket such as this. We would spend more time finding the date code correct Carter carb and rebuild it, and then everything would be numbers matching. But in this particular case, we wanted something that's trouble-free and very enjoyable for our client. So we chose this is probably the best way for him to enjoy it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply, if you come around this side to the driver's side, what I'll do is I'm just going to easily hop in. So this car hasn't been running at all today. We brought it in first thing in the morning, and we're in the early evening. So what I'm going to do is just show you how smooth. So this is a 1959 Corvette, and so basically I'm just going to put the foot on my clutch, step on the fuel once in terms of the gas pedal, and we'll just turn it over, and you can see how easily this starts with this new carburetor. So if you come a little closer, you'll notice it's on fast idle right now. So this is a normal setting. It's running probably 16 or 1700 RPMs. As it starts to warm up, it'll automatically come down to a normal idle. So rather than us waiting for that, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a tap on the fuel. And there's your normal idle. So this is going to be very enjoyable. I think it's a really nice enhancement. And then while we're here, I'll be quiet. If you come around to the back, you'll notice that the exhaust system is original. So the tailpipes are coming out through the rear of the bumpers on either side. And it's the original exhaust note. So I'll stop talking, and if you get a little bit closer with the camera, you should be able to hear the exhaust system. So that's one of the things we really like about enhancing, especially a classic car like this 1959. Everything looks original and stock. We have the tailpipes coming out exactly as they should in terms of appearance, sound. It has the resonators and the mufflers as it should, but having an enhanced carburetor just makes it more enjoyable, I think, in my opinion. As we come around the back, you can see the style of this is quite attractive. The chrome is in quite nice shape. We'll spend a little bit more time cleaning the chrome. As I mentioned earlier, we've got the really nice medallions, and the paint you can see is quite nice after we spent quite a bit of time wet sanding and polishing. So our client should have quite a lot of enjoyment with the paint the way it is. As we come along the side here, the tires are quite dirty, and I apologize. We'll get these. We have a little bit of a dusty. It's been dry here, so we've got some dust build up on the tires, which we'll properly clean. But these tires are the original size. We have the stainless hubcaps that are period correct with the simulated knockoffs. So they're the correct wheel, the correct size of tire, and these are the Cooper Cushion Ride tires, and they are the authentic size, which is a 6.70 by 15. So they're very unique to the 59 Corvette. They're a little bit narrower, but they are period correct and the proper 2-inch wide white walls. As you come further up this side, you'll see, as we open up the passenger door, the interior is in quite nice shape. The carpet has been replaced at one time. The leather / vinyl seating is in nice shape. You'll see the gear shifter being the 4-speed manual. And we quite like this style. So you'll see the dash. Now it'll need some enhancing at some point. The Corvette lettering is missing here in the dash. The mirror has a little bit of wear along the sides where the mirror-like finish is starting to come off a little bit. But these are all small little details that we can enhance for our client later on. It has a soft top down underneath here. So an option was the hard top. This 59 just came with the white soft top, and it's brand new. So it's once again going to be kind of nice. So even on a day that maybe isn't so promising, if the client's out on a test drive, we replaced some of the mechanisms so that the soft top would operate correctly. Because that's another thing that has to work. If this vehicle in Ontario, if it's equipped with a convertible top, the convertible top, if it's here, it has to operate properly, which means it has to be latched in all 4 locations. So we had one of the latches in the front that was seized, and then we had one in the rear on the driver's side that was seized. So the latches did not work, which meant it wouldn't latch down the 2 hooks, both front and rear, to securely hold the white soft top in place. So we corrected that. We've lubricated and adjusted the top so it will close properly if it's foul weather. As we come up the side, this is probably one of the prettiest color combinations in this body style, in my opinion, being the red with the white coves, and it's quite attractive. When you come along the front, one of the couple of things I missed under the engine bay that I forgot to mention earlier, most of the vintage Corvettes that we have at Last Chance Auto Store, a lot of the electrical components do not work. And the big thing is this wiper motor. And it's over many years, there was different styles. In 59, it was an option to have the washer, which the washer pump was attached to the wiper motor. This model of car, when it was ordered, it was not ordered with the washer. It was just, yes, with the washer. So it's the wiper motor itself. We opened it up and tried to rebuild it. It was seized inside. We tried to clean the contacts and lubricate it and get it to work, and it didn't. So we ended up getting a reconditioned or refurbished one, and we replaced it so the wipers work as they should. So I just wanted to basically do a brief walk around, share with you quite a rare car. It's a 1959 Corvette Convertible, and quite attractive with the red and the white. So once again, I'm John from Last Chance Auto Restore, and I thank you for watching.